Hi everyone. My name is Artsem. I'm from Minsk. I currently working for Brimit and lead Sitecore developer and Sitecore MVP. And today I'm going to speak about JSS. So it's also related with front-end. Is there any front-end developers in the room? Do you know what is JSS? JS? Okay, it's good. So I prepared this presentation with my colleague. Unfortunately, he got sick yesterday, and I will try to cover his part of presentation. He is a front-end developer. It means that we will have less front-end stuff today. Okay. JSS. Okay. JSS was released along with Sitecore 9 and was introduced in Symposium in Las Vegas, and it was introduced by Alex Shiba, and he really helped us to prepare our presentation. He tried to help us with solving some issues which we have got during preparing our demos and so on. Yes, and before I start talking about JSS, I should mention a couple of words about Headless CMS and Headless approach. And actually, Headless is an architecture that allows physical decoupling of content creation and organization, delivery of content and presentation to one or more channels, and the rendering of the content and presentation on one or more multiple devices. So in other words, it's CMS without front-end or rendering part. Is there anybody who have implemented your Sitecore solution according with headless approach? Maybe someone has implemented your own service for retrieving data from Sitecore, or maybe someone used the Sitecore services client for getting item data and then use this data for rendering on maybe mobile devices or using some JavaScript frameworks like React. Yes? No? Okay, the main problem of that we lose the ability to use experience editor, personalization, and some other marketing tools like A/B testing and so on. And let's move to the term of JSS, Sitecore JavaScript Service, or JSS. JSS is a toolkit for JavaScript developers, allowing to build full-fledged customer solutions like single-page applications, web applications, websites, using modern JavaScript libraries like React, JS, Angular, and currently there are examples for React Native, and be completely unplugged from Sitecore. So, well, we decided to use JSS on your projects. And there are two ways how you can start your project. It's code first or Sitecore first. In case of using code first, front-end developer works disconnected from Sitecore and defines component structure, or Sitecore structure, while in code component definitions and root data. Sitecore information architecture, it's templates, renderings, and content items and so on, is generated via the import process. And this approach is good for smaller projects and temporary sites, good for front-end-led projects, and for micro apps within a large site. So it means that front-end developer creates the React components. For example, React components can be Angular components and so on. Define the structure of data. So he creates the objects which he expect to use for these components, and then all this stuff will be deployed to Sitecore. In case of using Sitecore first. The Sitecore information architecture are created by Sitecore developer, and import process is not utilized in this case. Front-end developers still works disconnected from Sitecore and create components and mock root data based on the contracts which will provided by Sitecore developers. And it allows us to use concurrent works. So if you do Sitecore, not Sitecore, if you front-end developers can work together with contracts which provided by Sitecore developer. And this approach is better for large and complex projects and organizations looking for full control over the Sitecore information architecture. So, how we should install JSS? So there is two parts of installation. The first one is installation Sitecore modules. There is a pointer here. Yeah. So the first package is important, and if we want to use JSS, we should install them. And the second package we should install if we are going to use code first approach, and this package contains ship service for importing our changes from front-end project to Sitecore. So now a bit of front-end part. It's how we should install our front-end project. First of all, we should install JSS, Sitecore JSS CLI. It's something like namespace, and it allows us to use commands like JSS and the command. So in this case, it's create. JSS create, and then we should put the application name, which we expect our application should be called, and then we should select some templates which provided by JSS. So I will show you a bit later which templates we already have. And then just run the command JSS start, and it will run the it will run Webpack local server and run our application. So in this case, this application will work disconnected from Sitecore, and actually we have a list of application modes which provided by JSS, and it provides a lot of flexibility for us. So some of the modes is better or is recommended for development, some of them recommended for demo and for production servers, but all of them characterized by two things. It's a place where rendering will be performed. It can be so rendering can be performed by browser or by server, and the data provider. So the scene which will provide the data for our components. It can be some JSS or JSON or Yarn. JSON files in disconnected mode, and the data for our site will come in from local files, and it allows for the front-end developer works disconnected from Sitecore, and the data can come from Sitecore, directly from Sitecore. Okay, so it's a difficult diagram. This diagram is represent the high-level structure of data and data flow of JSS, and we can see that JSS based on the list of services like layout service, content service, so Sitecore service client, and actually in the last version, GraphQL is also included to the project, and there is a dictionary service, and there are also two additional services like import service and Sitecore ship service. I separated them because these two services are not took a part in is not take a part of rendering process. Okay. Also, there is Node.js server and the Vue engine, which also used Node.js, and these things are used for render our presentation, for render our components. Actually, which will be used for render in some time. It depends which application mode we are using. Actually, if we use integrated mode or mode for production, it will be rendered by Vue engine, and if we use some probably disconnected mode, the Node.js server will be used for rendering our components. So otherwise, we can see that the data for our components always come from layout service. So it's the global scene which always provide the data for our components. Also, this service used for providing the root JSON or something like pull command for getting initial data for our front-end developer. So actually, we can. So it's used in Sitecore first approach, and when some Sitecore developer already implemented some structure in Sitecore, we can run the pull command, and in front-end developer will be created a list of JSON files with fields and the values for these fields, and this data can be used by front-end developer, and he can be disconnected from Sitecore using these files. Actually, when we did something in our front-end project, we use the Sitecore ship and import service for providing our updates to Sitecore. So, what about content service and Sitecore service client? This service is used for providing some additional data about our items. So actually, layout service provides data related with our context item, but content service we can run and we can retrieve any other data which we need for our application. Dictionary service is utilized for supporting multi-language solutions. So let's move next. There is a demo time. It's a demo of my colleague, and actually he showed the front-end part and described the front-end solution. I will try to do something like that. Okay. Not good.
Oh.
Can I then switch between? No, extend again in this place. Extend.
I don't know if it will work.
Okay. Not working.
Maybe select display.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I will not forward. Okay, where is my project now? Okay, so there is, it's an example of our React project, and actually it represents, so it's similar, it's simple React application with some additional data related with JSS. Actually, there is some data folder which contains some, for example, dictionaries which we are adding for our application, and then it will be imported to Sitecore as a dictionary. Yeah. We have two language versions, and we can deploy it directly to Sitecore. Then we have roots. It's something like items. It's something like presentation items, pages in Sitecore. The roots should be and will be imported to Sitecore as our content structure. Actually, the root item is a home page, and we are defining some data for these items. So for fields, and so it's in YAML format. It's also supported by JSS, and actually we are defining some placeholders there, and then we put some components in the placeholders, and we also can define so the data source, the value for fields of data source. It means when import will be utilized, the article components will be created, and that data source item also will be created for him, and it will contain title, text, body, and this value will be set for this component. Actually, so we are defining our structure of site in the roots items, roots components, or root files. We implemented about page and private page. So it actually contains two files for two languages. Also, there some context. So it will represent something like context, something like Sitecore context object in our Sitecore solution. So the data folder contains some data which front-end developer used for his front-end project. So then we have a dist folder. It's actually built. It actually contains the files which already built. We have a lib, so which contains some services, which some configurations for services. It can be connected or disconnected. It depends on which application mode we use. Some of these files will be used for retrieving data. It can retrieve data from data folder or for Sitecore. Actually, there is a default folder for front-end solution. It's not modules. Also, there is Sitecore folder, and we can see the config folder there. There we can, front-end developer can put some configs which will be deployed to Sitecore, and actually this config defines the site in Sitecore, and defines some app for JSS, some default configuration. Also, we can the definitions folder, and there we are defining our templates which will be added to Sitecore. For example, we can define UI components. So first, for example, we have hero slider item. Okay, and with display name hero slider item. Actually, we are defining the fields of data source of this component. Actually, we can see that there is some images, some single layout text and rich text fields, general link, and so on. So actually, it's a list of components which will be created in Sitecore after applied import will be applied. So something like for our pages, so routes items, we are defining the name of our item, display name, and the placeholders which should be added to this component. So also there are some placeholders which we can define the display name for placeholder settings. So and there is manifest. Manifest is generated by our JavaScript file. So it's file which will be generated by our JavaScript, and it will represent all data that should be added to Sitecore. Actually, we can see the templates there, renderings there, placeholders, app name, so it's some system data, and items with some data and values for. So actually, exactly this file would be sent to Sitecore for applying some item generation process. Yeah, and after we applied our import, we can see the next items in Sitecore. Actually, there are templates, so we can see the folder with the same name of our application, JSS application, and we can see the data source items there. For example, here image, so with the fields, with the same fields as in our JSON files. Then renderings also will be created. We can see the rendering. So, for example, let's see the hero image. So it's JSON rendering. So it's the type of rendering which provided by JSS, and actually it has one field with component name. During the rendering, our presentations understand that this rendering should be that Sitecore should find our component in in our JavaScript files and render the React component. Okay, so some placeholder settings also created with renderings which can be entered to the current placeholder. So, and look, actually at our site there is a dictionaries, so it's just a simple dictionary. There is our pages, home, about, and private, with some data sources which provided by JSS, by our JavaScript. So let's see how it looks in the live. So it's a pretty simple example. So we can use some login, some private text can be shown. So we can see that we can think that we change our pages, but it's the same page, just some JavaScript works and change our path, but so it's something like single page application. So experience editor, it's also supported. I opened it before because it always takes a lot of time. Yeah. So yes, let's move next. Oh, sorry. Okay. So after front-end developer applied some changes, so he would be able to deploy maybe I'm not sure that front-end developers would deploy, but also he can do that. We can utilize some commands for deploying our changes to Sitecore. If we run JSS deploy package, only some artifacts, JavaScript artifacts, so I mean JavaScript, CSS files, images, fonts, and so on, will be added to our package, and templates, renderings, and placeholders only, because some content I will describe why it should contain only templates, renderings, and placeholders a bit later. And so this stuff will be deployed to Sitecore. Also, we can add some additional parameters to our command. It can include content, include dictionary, and also we can set the language if you want delivery other language. We should change this parameter. Actually, in this case, all stuff will be imported to Sitecore. So it's good for initial deployment, because after our first deployment, some content editors, maybe some manager, can start working with content, and if we run this again, all content can be overridden in our solution. It would be not good news for content editor. So also we can avoid to deploy items in general, or files. It means artifacts, JavaScript artifacts. We can deploy, for example, only items if we only change some data related with manifest generation, or maybe we only change some JavaScript or our component. This command will be deployed only JavaScript stuff. So we have the help command, and there is a list of all commands. So now I'm going to show the demo, which will be interesting for backend developers. I'm going to show some examples which we implemented, and I want to describe the next features. Actually, it's layout service and his extensibility, dictionary service. So I want to show how GraphQL works, and maybe I will show how. So I already showed how multi-language solution is working. For multi-site solutions, it's also supported, but we need to create separate front-end solutions for each site which we want to have in our Sitecore instance. So the demo time. Okay. Okay. First, I want to open JSS GitHub repository, and I'm going to show which examples we already have. So there is an example for AngularJS, for React.js, for React GraphJS. So it's actually example for React. So it's pretty simple with the advanced simple React application, but it used GraphQL for retrieving some additional data from Sitecore. Also, there is a React Native example, and as I remember, today was added example for Vue.js, but I don't see it there. So it's a list of examples, but the only one thing is common for each of these examples. It's layout service. It doesn't matter which technology you will choose for rendering your presentation. It would otherwise it should anyway. Anyway, it would utilize layout service for retrieving data from Sitecore, and so the current demo will demonstrate how we can use that. Not if you don't want to use some React maybe. So it's pretty simple if you want to use layout service for your needs, for your backend needs maybe. We just need to set up. If you remember, there are two Sitecore packages. You just need to set up a server package, and you can use the layout service direct after this. Okay. So we added, for example, some Content Explorer. So this model was implemented during our hackathon process by our team. Okay. And this model is represent the Content Explorer, and it represents our content tree. So the all data is retrieved from layout service, and actually we can click on the sum. I hope it will work. Yeah. Oh. So actually we can see the structure of our presentation with placeholders and with components which added to the current placeholder, and with fields and with the value of these fields. So it's pretty simple example. The main idea that we also want to implement the context switcher for preview the components, the preview page, how it would looks for some different context. For example, we supplied some presentation with some rules of presentation. So how it looks in how our output of JSS looks for this solution. So actually the output of layout service contains two objects as context and root data. Context is represent Sitecore context, and so it's the first thing which we can extend in layout service, and we can do that easy. By default, it contains only maybe four objects, for fields: page editor, site, so nothing interesting, page state, and language. We added the current item object with contains, and so no, unfortunately we don't. I don't remember. I think we have added it here, and this data we use for data which we can see after clicking. So it actually contains this data, and we added the content tree, which contains all our content items, which some with ID and which ID of our parent we needed for building our tree. We added this object because by default layout service retrieving the data of context item. We can't retrieve the list of. We can't request the data for list of items, only context. But we need all items for building our tree. Okay, the root object, it's more complex. It contains data related with also related with our current item. So in this case it's home. There is a fields that added to this item. There is some common data, and there is a placeholders. We have a list of placeholders and the components which added to this placeholder. Each component has the component name, the ID of data source item, and by default the fields object is populated with data with fields of our data source item. And the fields object is the second scene which we can override or extend. We use these fields for when we try to open the window, we can see the structure, and we use this data for building this. Actually, I want to show how we can. Okay, do you see? If you want to extend our context object, so it means that we will get this data for each request to our layout service. We just need to implement the JSS get layout service context processor. We can build any data there, and we just need to add this data to context data object, and it will be serialized automatically. So as you can see, we extend it with some data related with current item. There is also extension for our context, and this functionality built our tree. So it's implemented. It's also based on the same class. So the next example, which I want to show you, it's okay. Well, it's Xamarin app. This app also built on layout service, so we can use any email in this case. It doesn't matter for now. So this app represents some catalog of services which company probably provided for your customers, and we can click on some service and we can see some details about this service. So what's interesting in this case, that we also can apply some personalization rules. So personalization is applied for this content. Maybe I mistaken this email, or probably it doesn't work. So it's some magic with Xamarin. It's cached sometimes our data. Sorry? Oh, it's probably cached. So actually we applied our personalization rules, and at least the images should be different. No, so in my case, only images would be different. In the live project, it can be different services provided for different contexts. Yeah. So we only install the layout service package and run and send a request to our layout service for retrieving data from Sitecore, and I'm going to show you how it looks in Sitecore. A lot of Sitecores. So we see this error because this hostname is configured for my JSS app, but this JSS app doesn't contain any presentation. We use this only for building data for our application. So we have added a simple site with dictionaries, which then this dictionary is used in our Xamarin app for providing some translations for labels, and we have home item. This home item has 3 service screen rendering in the presentation. This rendering doesn't have any HTML and it doesn't have an implementation. It's only added for building structure. And so for the last one, we added some personalization rules, and for each service screen has a data source which is located under the home page. So pretty simple, but it allows us to manage our Xamarin application without do a lot of coding in our Sitecore solution. So, and some magic in the end of presentation. So it's GraphQL. Somebody know what does GraphQL mean? So it's the thing that you currently see. It's a query builder, but then we can use this query for sending requests to Sitecore from JavaScript and for retrieving data regarding some items. For example, there is some intelligence. For example, we want to retrieve data regarding Sitecore content item. Okay, and we want to get ID. For example, we want to get icon and URL of this item. Also, we want to see his children, and for this, and we want to see the name of children. Maybe we want to see the display name, and if we want to build our tree, we want to URL of these children. Also, we want to see template and which template is inherited and fields and field types of this template. Just run that, and we get in the current item with his URL, with icon, with fields. There is a long list because it contains each field that item contains, his children's with URLs and names. So we can request only the data which we want. We don't need to request all data of item. Maybe we just need only URL for items. And the second example, I prepared it, so I copied it from documentation. It's the search also available. You can search by some keyword, define some pagination and facets. And also we are getting some items. In this case, we retrieve the only one. I know that I have this item. I have a lot of these items. So the search also can be requested from JavaScript without any code customization. So we only need to add some endpoint in configuration where we define which database we want to request. So, and that's all. Okay, so let's move next to the only conclusion. Oh, again. So, the conclusion. Actually, and usually, I said that it was a good experience and the technology is promising. Yeah, it's true. But now I want to share some, I want to share some tips maybe. So currently, there's this technology in preview, technical preview state, and so I'm working with that about 4 months maybe, and 2 updates was provided, and after each update I had to spend about a day for making my solution working again, because so the Sitecore team changed some commands, changed some structures. They changed the documentation, and I had to read the documentation 3 times because they changed something, and I don't know what they changed something exactly in the documentation. Yeah, maybe someone want to try it in the real project. I also want, but I want to wait the final release of this technology before. Also, yeah, so it's the main problem that so the documentation has some errors, and sometimes it throws some issues for me because I need to figure it out why something doesn't work. But I did according to the documentation, but it doesn't work. So yeah, I reported about 7 maybe errors in documentation to Sitecore team, which working under JSS. If you want to try JSS, I recommend to download example. So it's pretty difficult to implement, for example, React solution, which will work with JSS from scratch. So it's much easier to download the solution from Git repository and remove unnecessary components or remove all components. Maybe leave just one, for example, and did it from this solution. Yeah, I think that's all what I want to share today. Thank you for attention. Any questions?
Exactly. Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah.
Maybe do we know where the final version of the JSS will be released? Do you know some prediction?
In the half of this year, maybe June or July. But I'm not sure.
Okay.
Would you recommend to use JSS in current state on production?
If you recommend?
Yeah,
If you recommend.
Yeah.
Louis Grofan, right?
I didn't understand your question.
I asked if, in your opinion, it's a good idea to use that in current state, right? In previous state?
In previous state.
Yeah.
So, it depends of term of project. Maybe if it's really simple and not a big project, and you can implement it, and so it will work. It currently works, but if you want to have a long-term solutions and you want to apply some upgrades, it's not a good idea, because in technical preview version the update package is not provided, and you need to to see what was changed and apply it finally to your solution.
What about this graph browser?
GraphQL, yeah.
Yeah, it's a part of JSS or it's an additional extension?
It's part of JSS. But
what for we can use it? What for we can use it?
For okay, as I said, layout service is providing data regarding the context item. But sometimes we need some additional data regarding, maybe it can be navigation structure, for example, which is not related with current item. We can retrieve this data using this service. Any more questions?
So you showed the way that the Sitecore templates are defined through the JavaScript.
Yeah.
So say you start from scratch by just defining those templates. Is that a way to do it, or whether you actually define those templates within Sitecore and then someone can export that to the JSS?
So there, as I said,
It's a way. Is there like a bidirectional sort of flow, or how do you maintain your templates in JavaScript versus?
So it depends which way you use for implementing your solutions. If you use code first, it's actually provided by front-end developer. Front-end developer defines the templates.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it can be also provided by Sitecore developers in the Sitecore first, and then we can use the layout service for building this data. So data for front-end developers, it will be imported from Sitecore to front-end project, and then in this case templates will be supported by Sitecore developers.
So in the second case, when we use Sitecore first approach,
Yeah.
Do we still have experience editor support?
Yes. Experience editor, yeah. So the Sitecore developer defines only the structure. So Sitecore developer can use any templates. There are no any limitations regarding the templates type. So the Sitecore developer do the site, which they usually do, but components will be defined by front-end developer in the future after the structure will be built.
No more questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you for presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Let's just do 15